failed to protect the army bases of the Iraqi regime, and literally tribal leaders and chieftains came with huge Mercedes trucks, literally loaded them with heavy machinery and equipment, and took off with it. We made a lot of mistakes there. The majority Shiites in Iraq, naturally, gained power. The Sunnis are disenfranchised. The Kurds decide, what the heck, we'll just govern our own area. Before you know it, we'll have our own country. Don't worry. Why is this? Okay. Now, if we look at the fighters and the breakdown of these fighters, you basically see, don't worry about, now the bars represent how many people per million. But the key is the number of the fighters coming and what they're coming from. Jordan, you have 2,000 fighters coming in. Tunisia, you have 3,000 fighters. Why? Because after the Arab Spring, the Muslim Brotherhood had more influence, and it was free to travel from there. Jordan, these are mostly not Jordanian, tribal Jordanians, but rather Palestinians living in Jordan with Jordanian nationality, living in camps. What the heck, let's go volunteer, they're paying good money. We'll go do it. So you end up with all of these people coming, but Turkey didn't see anything. The result of the problem, the events in Syria, is millions of people had to leave the country. Just to give you an example and put things in perspective, there are over close to 1,100,000 Syrian refugees in Lebanon. That is the equivalent of, over the last 3 years, 84 million Mexicans crossing the border as refugees into the United States. We're talking of 11 million immigrants we don't know what to do with. Try 84 million in 3 years. So this is what the map looks like today in Syria. You have the Kurds controlling the yellow parts. You have ISIS and these fighters controlling the gray parts. These are all, the red is all contested areas. So-called, the green areas are our free Syrian army. How free they are, I don't know. And they change allegiance every day. The ISIS, of course, went and occupied all of this area. And in doing so, picked up a few hundred Humvees here, state-of-the-art machine guns, sophisticated armored vehicles. And by the way, they stopped by the central bank in Mosul, in the north of Iraq, which they occupied. And they told the president of the bank, can you please open the vault? Thank you very much. Brought a couple of trucks. They loaded $500 million in greenbacks, not used yet. $500 million in greenbacks. So anybody who tells you that they are beheading people in order to pay ransom, forget that story. They're beheading people because they want to draw us into battle. And the minute, and we're starting to succumb. Once we get into battle, what happens? More hostages. More, and great propaganda machine to attract more fundamentalist Muslims, grow the So we welcomed turmoil against Syria. We worked hand in hand with Turkey and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. The so-called opposition doesn't exist. They've never been able to congeal together. So when they move into Iraq, they drop their arm. Why fight? Let the Americans come and fight. Here are the Humvees, here's the guns, thank you very much. Take our military clothes off, put civilian clothes on, go back to your villages. And the Sunni disenfranchised area that we saw, all of them were sympathetic and welcoming. We don't want the Shiites to rule us, God forbid. So now, I promise you 1 minute we end. Assad thinks the enemy of my enemy is my friend. He puts his hand forward to our president to say, you're trying to fight ISIS? I'm trying to fight ISIS. Come, let's join hands. And we are going to arm the rebels. So we open our boxes of weapons and we say, you're one of our allies, right? Oh, yes, 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 of course. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Goodbye. Next, you're our ally, right? Okay. And I'll end with this slide. There's a lot of depth to this, so I want you to pay attention. We're talking about American exceptionalism. We are a unique country in the world. We side with freedom in the Middle East, with an asterisk. We side with freedom in the Middle East if it's bad for except if it's bad for Israel. We side with freedom in the Middle East if it's except if it's bad for our oil companies. We are with freedom in the Middle East if we like except if we like the dictator. We are for freedom in the Middle East except if we appointed the dictator. We're for freedom in the Middle East except if the revolution fails. And we are for freedom in the Middle East except if radicals are elected. Thank you. Anyway, I'm glad to take any questions. I'll take like 5, 6 questions, and it's been a long night. Anybody who wants to leave certainly are welcome to do so. I will be here to answer as many questions as you have going forward. Questions? If you have to leave, please, I won't feel offended. Who's going to start with the question?
So what's the answer? Thank you.
Unfortunately, we only could have a romantic atmosphere like that or this. And with this, we couldn't see the slides. Yes?
What do you think about the airstrikes against ISIS to prevent the massacre of the Yazidis on the mountain?
It is not, we are not responsible for every adversity that becomes any people around the world. If the same thing was happening today in the Central African Republic, we wouldn't even think about it. We would do nothing about it. 1 million were killed in Darfur. We did nothing about it. The whole strategy of ISIS and the fighters is to draw us into the fight. Every person you kill gets 72 virgins in heaven. And 72 volunteers will come join the cause to aspire to the same end. This is not a, who do you arm? Who do you support? We're sending now already thousands of experts or intelligence officers, or whatever you want to call them, to help us know where to bomb. Watch when a school gets bombed. Then what? All of Iraq will be against us. Not just the Sunnis, but everybody will be against us. They have to solve their own problem. They have to duke it out. Why are we leading the effort to bring down ISIS? It is a problem of the Arab world. It's a problem of the Muslim world. It's a problem of the region. Their royal seats are at stake. But it's better. Let America lead. We will support it. Saudi Arabia boldly today announces we will absolutely use all our air force to support the effort to bring down ISIS. Why? Because there's no anti-aircraft with ISIS, not so far. So they will come and carpet bomb, no problem. It is not our problem, it is their problem. We can support them if they put together a plan. Not go begging them to come and stick their flag up so they can claim to be a part of the coalition that we're preparing. Yes.
Given that we're here in the United States, we have some interests in the Middle East, what would be in the best interest of the United States to do now?
To stay out of the Middle East. We don't need their oil. Oil is fungible. If they don't sell us the oil, it means they sell it to Brazil or to Argentina. If they sell it to Argentina, then we have more oil here that we can use. We don't need to import more. So oil is fungible. Nobody needs oil anymore. But I tell you, if you're talking about Halliburton, if you're talking of the Shell and Exxon, that's a whole different thing. They have their agenda, and we unfortunately play into it. Yes?
It seems to me that we always look to the military solution in this country. If someone is beheaded, we don't consider enough, and no matter that the president is elected and gets the Nobel Peace Prize, if he spends enough time listening to the daily briefing by the military,
Sure.
after years his first reaction is we have to use a military solution. What is your feeling about that, and where do you think other alternative ways of coming to peace in this area would be?
We've made so many mistakes. We as Americans have made so many mistakes. We have sided with so many of the wrong sides. We are siding today with the Saudi royal family. I can spend an hour with you here and make you puke every 5 minutes. Just listening to what the Saudi royal family does. It is disgusting. But hey, they are our allies. It's not just because you're an ally. We then go and try to force our democracy, our form of democracy, which took a good 200 years to develop, force it on the West Bank and Gaza. And when the result of the election is Muslim conservatives get elected, we boycott, we refuse to cooperate, we refuse to support. We have to have fundamental values we have to preserve, and we're not doing that. We're doing the expedient thing, and we're doing it because we have such a huge military budget and huge assets and bases, and every time something happens, all the military jump in. Great occasion to beat the drums of war, ask for more planes, more cars, more Humvees, more this, more that. So there has to be a long-term solution, but at least I hope that I shared with you some aspects of the story that normally are not told to the average American. Somehow we want a soundbite, we want a 30-second answer. There are no 30-second answers. Yes?
So it sounds as though we are talking about isolationism, possibly. But what do we do with those that have been exiled, the thousands upon thousands upon thousands? Are we a part of a humanitarian process to take care of them in this part of the world? Or I'm hearing isolationism.
I am not at all advocating isolationism. I'm advocating doing things based on principle. When Iraq invaded Kuwait, and Bush the father, 91, went to the United Nations and went to Congress and the Senate, I expected him to say, we protect what is right, and we stand for what is right, and we fight what is wrong. What was his message to Congress and the Senate? We have oil interests in the Middle East, critical interests in the Middle East. We have to push Saddam Hussein back because Kuwait is critically important to our economy. I was devastated to hear that. I was all for getting Saddam Hussein out, but the reason should not be that we have an oil interest or no oil interest. It should be because we have a set of values that we nurture and work with. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes.
Is there a role for the UN in trying to help solve this crisis?
I worked 25 years for the UN. The UN can move mountains and do amazing things with a caveat. If the main parties are in agreement, if the permanent members of the Security Council are in agreement, we can move mountains overnight. When we came to the brink of war regarding weapons of mass destruction in Syria and poison gas and this and that, and the Soviet Union decided to work with the United States, within 6 months, those were out of there, we didn't have to shoot a single bullet. There's tons of stuff that can be done if the two sides agree. When the two sides don't agree, when the Soviet Union doesn't agree to work with us, Russia doesn't agree to work with us in Syria because they have a huge naval base, the only naval base in the Mediterranean they have is in Tartus on the Syrian coast, then there's nothing you can do. So you have to get to work with Russia to solve the problem of Syria. Other question, last question, yes.
Given the political and military interests in this country, do you have any words of hope or optimism for a long-term solution?
We have 4 children in our family. I have a younger brother who is a professor at Harvard. I have a brother who is a merchant in Jeddah in Germany. I have a sister who is a professor of nursing in Los Angeles, and me. When this conflict started, we had 4 different opinions and positions. Now all 4 of us are totally at a loss as to who to side with and what to do and how to do it. Because if there are no sides to side with, it is like a quagmire, it's like quicksand. Today I'm with you, tomorrow I'm not. As soon as the ISIS people commandeered the Humvees, every fighter wanted to drive a Humvee. They all moved across to the side of the ISIS to start driving Humvees and have nice American new military hardware and much better clothes, you know. Well, that's the way life is. Thank you very much. I'll be around.